Okay, Colin Liddell, how are you?
Hi, Luke.
Yes, how's it going, Colin?
It's early in the morning, or at least it feels like it's early in the morning. Just got up. So you've been up all night, or what time
Yes,
where you are?
it's 12:30 a.m. So
Ah,
I've been streaming for about 6.5 hours. Uh, Colin, I just want to read you something by political scientist George Hawley. He's got a new book coming out, The Alt-Right, What Everyone Needs to Know, coming out in 1 year. I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs. As the alt-right was growing, people in the movement often discussed what they derisively called white nationalism 1.0. The term refers to those white nationalist groups and individuals that were active in the late 20th century and the first years of the 21st century. The alt-right used that term mockingly because those groups were ineffective to the point of hurting their own cause. They had a deserved reputation for violence and had little to offer well-adjusted white Americans. Those groups were known for their constant infighting, and their leaders attempted to attract cult-like followings. In some cases, those white nationalists formed literal religious cults. Colin, white nationalism 1.0 sounds pretty similar to the alt-right over the past 3 years.
yeah, I would say that that's an accurate description of what happened. The alt-right made the mistake of sort of going back and becoming white nationalism 1.0.
And so I was also arguing that the biggest challenge facing the dissident right is the quality of its adherents. And let me just read you one paragraph from a book called The Body Keeps Score. Isolating oneself into a narrowly defined victim group promotes the view of others as irrelevant at best and dangerous at worst, which eventually only leads to further alienation. Gangs, extremist political parties, and religious cults may provide solace, but they rarely foster the mental flexibility needed to be fully open to what life has to offer, and as such cannot liberate their members from their traumas. Well-functioning people are able to accept individual differences and acknowledge the humanity of others. So I see a problem in parts of the alt-right, parts of the dissident right, that it's become a victim group that does not exactly foster mental flexibility.
A victim group. Well, I think it's just it's like that seems to be like an over complicated explanation of what went wrong. I think you can really just sum it up in very simple terms, like you've got to appeal to the normies.
Right. And what's giving you a positive perspective on the dissident right? We've certainly got significant growth in Europe. So does that hearten you?
Well, obviously, when you look at Europe, you can see that there is a way to go about this, and eventually, people in America will also work it out. But there seems to be so many interestingly toxic forms of stupidity in America. I mean, it just reminds me of this Judge Dredd story I read when I was a kid, where Judge Dredd has to travel across from Megacity 1 on the East Coast to Megacity 2 on the West Coast, and he goes through this area called the Cursed Earth, and it's a kind of irradiated nuclear wasteland full of all these kind of mutated forms of Americanism. And so, that kind of sort of sums up how I see a lot of the elements in American in the American alt-right. They're very, very LARPy. They're very, very over defensive. They're very, very try hard. In Europe, I mean, obviously people are more sophisticated. They're more politically aware. They know how the enemy uses tricks against you. They know how movements can be subverted, and so they've gone about things in a different way. They've actually modified their movements to make them acceptable to the majority of people, and that's why in places like Italy they are now the majority of people.
Colin, about 7 hours ago, I began this stream with Jim Goad came on and he slammed you. I don't remember exactly for what, but do you have a history with Jim Goad?
Jim Goad. Who is Jim Goad again? Remind me.
He wrote the book Shit Magnet.
Oh, him, that guy that looks like a testicle. Okay. Now I've got nothing against Jim Goad, and I find it kind of vaguely amusing that he seems to be afraid of me or scared of me in some way. I think some years ago we had some minor disagreements on the internet, on some comment board possibly. And then I was also leaving some comments at Tacky's Mag when he was running that, and he banned me from the discus on Tacky's Mag, which fine. I didn't really care too much about that. And he seems to kind of remember me as some kind of bugbear, and he's just like an old guy who's obviously on the way down. And he seems to overreact to a lot of things. I think at his time of life, he should just be more mellow. It's time to get his rocking chair out.
I'm a big fan of Brett Stevens, and you published a terrific essay from him, How to Know If You Have Joined a Hate Group. And here are some points. It's not your fault. You must explain to them that nothing is their fault. Their personal failures, collapse of their society, and the mediocrity of everything was not their fault and was in fact done to them. And the fault lies with someone else. Since these problems still remain, you must explain how it was done to them by someone else. And there's this one simple trick, just like a clickbait headline. You now have to offer them an armchair solution, which needs to be mentally easy and very, very simple. So this kind of victim mentality that I was talking about 5 minutes ago is prevalent on parts of the dissident right, is prevalent among Jews, is prevalent among Christians, is prevalent among, I assume, every group, that they all want to believe that their problems have absolutely nothing to do with them and entirely lie with outside groups.
Yeah, well, I think we have to blame the Jews, really, because they've made being a victim so fashionable.
Yes. Well, they've certainly they played that game, but everyone's playing that game except people of Northern European heritage, it seems like. Well,
I think playing a victim means it used to mean you're losing, and that's why you played the victim, because you're losing. And you weren't actually playing the victim; you were the victim, and so you just kind of sent out signals that you were a victim. Yeah, we've got to get away from this kind of victim mentality. It's very hard to do now because our whole society is sort of 24/7 about this group is being racist. People are being racist against them, or there's this transgender thing going on, or whatever, and everybody is being bombarded with this kind of victim culture, and so people think, oh, this is completely normal,
right?
And, so I just think it's a sign of a culture and a society that is in some sort of weird kind of decline.
Now you're active online. You're active with the Affirmative Right.blogspot.com. What would you like to bring people's attention to for your work over the last few weeks?
Well, I just think there's a couple of things you have to really emphasize when you're on the dissident right. We have a tendency to escape into comforting memes, and the alt-right and the dissident right is very, very meme based, and when you're basing everything on memes, there is a tendency to delude yourself or not to examine things clearly and to get the wrong information, because memes are attractive, but they're not necessarily correct. I mean, memes tend to be true either because they refer inwards to your own psychological needs, or they refer outwards to a truth in the world. So you've got to distinguish which of those kind of memes you're following, because if you're referring inwards to your own psychological needs, then you're obviously going to end up deluding yourself and going into a kind of echo chamber mode. And so this has been one of the problems in the the so-called alt-right, which is now practically a dead movement. And the other thing is you've got to take a moral approach. And I think the alt-right really failed in this respect. And for me, morality is a very simple technical thing. It's not something invested with all sorts of religious emotion. Morality is simply not picking too many fights at once. This is why the Germans the Nazis are considered the most immoral group in the world. It's simply because they managed to pick too many fights with too many people. And if you do that, people will automatically view you as immoral.
Let's go to Southern Dingo.
All right. Thank you. And Colin, I think you made a couple of good points there in the beginning, but listening to you as you kind of went on, you kind of, I think you argued yourself into a little circular argument a little bit. Okay, I got the criticism that the alt-right is LARPy. All right, and then I got the criticism that the alt-right is stuck in a victim mentality. But that really doesn't really work for me, because first of all, like I would like to first ask you, do you think that white people are being victimized around the world systematically?
Yes and no. I mean, I think they are being, you could say they're being victimized in the sense that their existence is being undermined. But where is that coming from? Where is that coming from? A lot of that is coming from themselves.
Oh, really? Are we doing that?
Why isn't it coming from themselves? I mean, we're dealing with the problem of modernity. The problem of modernity is that it gives people too much freedom to do what they want, and what they want is not necessarily good for the long-term interests of their group. So we need to have we have to evolve a group strategy that deals with modernity, and sort of putting all the onus on some sort of sinister secret cabal of this or that is not really the way to do it. There are sinister secret cabals, and there are antagonistic groups, but we have to have a kind of collective group strategy that is evolved to deal with modernity. Modernity throws a lot of temptations and toxic elements at us just by its very inherent nature.
All right. Well, let me try to finish this point I was trying to make. Okay, so let's just say you're right. Let's say that a lot of this stuff is coming from other white people. I don't think it undermines the point that a lot of white people are the majority of white people are being victimized, right? You say yes and no, but I think that having your existence undermined qualifies as being victimized. All right. Now, that trying to point that out to somebody to show them what's going on, I'm kind of getting that you're gonna call that a victimhood mindset, like pointing out the fact that we're going down in population like crazy, that we're the only race of people who don't get to have a homeland. Like that, you could make an argument that this is some kind of victim mindset. But then if you're going to throw on top of it, don't have a victim mindset. Don't perpetuate this victim culture, right? Well, then if we can't bring that up, then what do we have to do? We have to project power. But here's the truth. We don't have power over our own country. So then it gets into LARPy territory. You're making an argument that we can't win with, off the bat. You're going to call it LARPy, or you're going to call it victimhood mindset. Do you have something that we can do that you won't criticize?
Well, I think, you've got to look at how the world works. You've got to analyze it, and you've got to organize. And when you kind of like just go into memes about being a victim, and a lot of that's actually people's own life choices, and they're quite happy making those choices, then you're not really getting at the root of the problem. I mean, the victim mentality wants to blame another, and I think you can blame other groups and other people, but the thing is, other groups and other peoples have their own interests, and to varying degrees they manage to realize those interests. But we've got to. I mean, and also there's a problem with we, because like when you say we, I mean, look at us. We're people located at various places on the globe. There's quite a lot of variety when we say we. We is almost a dysfunctional term, unless you're looking for a common enemy.
Well,
And
no,
then,
that's not. No, you're mischaracterizing my we. Like whenever I say we, I'm talking about the people that you're criticizing, right? Like you can lump those into a group and criticize it as the alt-right. I'm saying we, the people you're criticizing. Do you have a solution? Do you have something we can do that you won't criticize as either LARPy or projecting a victimhood mindset?
well, I'd say that the obvious thing to do is to look at where are people being successful in these issues, and where are they being unsuccessful. And I think there is a very clear American and European split here. The Europeans are dealing with these issues a lot better. They're a lot more organized. They're having a lot more political influence. In America, everything hangs on what Trump's going to do and whether Trump's going to tweet in the right direction. So America is doing very, very badly. And part of that is your political system. You have a very, I guess you could call the American system very, very sort of monopolizing. So you've got these two large parties that it's very, very difficult for any one group to control. Even a group as powerful supposedly as the Zionist lobby is having a hard time controlling American politics, because they've wanted a more American involvement in the Middle East. Obama didn't really do what they wanted, and now Trump's not really doing what they wanted. So you have these two big vacuous parties that nobody can really control and that don't really represent anybody. So you've got to look at Europe. And why does Europe work? Europe works because you have first of all, you have a lot of hate speech laws, which cut out all the morons and the idiots and the LARPers. And secondly, you have a lot of proportional representation. So small parties that have a valid and legitimate reason to be there and have a valid message can start to gain support and can start to build. That's why Europe is doing a lot better than America.
I think that you're hitting on some good points there, but I think that you're missing the end. I think you hit a foul ball, not a home run. Europe is doing better for one reason and one reason alone. All the countries in Europe are vastly more white than America, and they're smaller and easier to deal with, right? That's why. It's because all of Texas encompasses how much of Europe? A shit ton, right? We're a lot more.
I get that point, but having in America, you have a lot of non-whites, and you've always had a lot of non-whites in America. But wouldn't that actually give you something to? Wouldn't that actually give you something to sort of organize against and to actually be more aware of your group interests? Europe has only had we've only had non-whites for a comparatively short period of time in significant numbers, and a lot of what we see in Europe is a direct reaction towards this kind of influx of mainly Muslims. But in America, you've been living cheek by jowl with blacks certainly for centuries. But you've kind of avoided developing a kind of nationalistic consciousness despite that.
Well, okay, yes. Once again, I think we're talking about a foul ball here, because you're kind of misrepresenting, the demographics of America. Pre-1964, we were like 90% white at our lowest point, right? We were pretty much an ethno state, a big one, yes, but an ethno state nonetheless. And then the second point I wanted to make was, as far as the supposed control of the United States by Zionist Jews, I think that your example of like having to pull out of Syria, right, the one loss that they've incurred in how long, I don't think that that's a good case to make that they're not controlling the nation. Donald Trump does a lot of what they want. Donald Trump just did prison reform that's going to let out literal rapists, most of them non-white, most of them Democratic voting, from prison. He moved the capital of Israel to Jerusalem or whatever the hell it was, and it's gotten him nothing, but he keeps doing it anyways. So I think that look at our dollar. Look at who controls the Fed. Look at over half of the Fed chairmen have been what? I think we all know. Look at who the banks that are that make up the Fed, who are they owned by? I think we all know. I think that you're going to have a hard time making a case that Zionist Jews do not run this nation. Secondly, as far as the blacks thing, right? Like if we want to make a case, if we have a bunch of them here and we can try to turn it around and make a case as to why we shouldn't want to live with them, I think that's probably going to fall under your criticism of a victimhood mindset. Because if I try to convince somebody why they shouldn't want to live in a nation filled with that many non-whites, it's going to involve a lot of stories of victims of rape, murder, robbery, displacement. I really don't have anything else other than the negative effects that these people merely being here and leeching off our society and the harm that they cause,
Well,
I don't have another reason as to why white people should not want to live with them, right? So I mean, you're going to have to narrow like your
well,
field
let's
of what.
see. You're going on about the Jews there, right? So, yeah, I mean, the Jews obviously have a lot of power. Nobody's denying that the Jews don't have a lot of power, or that certain Jews have a lot of power. But are they really getting what they want? I mean, Israel is not doing that well. Israel is becoming increasingly isolated in the world. You know, a lot of the things that you point out that the Jews are supposedly bringing about in America will not benefit the Jews themselves. I mean, you're talking about the Jews mass immigration, or they want more and more immigrants. Having hundreds of millions of immigrants come into America and make it effectively a non-white country is not actually going to do the Jews any favor, because the Jews are white. And so when you create a society that's inimical to whites, Jews also suffer.
Yeah, but let's look at France. What happened whenever the policies that Jewish people pushed over there? What happened whenever those policies ruined a lot of France? What did they do? Did they stick around and suffer with us? No. Where'd they go? They went to Israel, because they can all go back there. They can all go there. All you have to do is
how many went back to Israel? Do you have numbers on that? I mean, I know some. I know
like, was it like 18,000 like just a year ago? 18,000 in a year went? They're going more and more every single day. But this is the problem. They are fleas on the back of a dog, and they can jump off any time, and they're doing so in record numbers.
But obviously, for French Jews to support mass Muslim migration, it's just obviously they're not serving their own interests. So it undermines the whole theory that they're a cleverly organized conspiracy to promote their own interests.
That's not what I said. I didn't say that. I didn't say they're a cleverly organized conspiracy to promote their own interests. What I'm saying is, like, no matter why they're pushing these policies successfully here and in Europe, that's not the question. The fact of the matter is they are, right? And whenever these policies ruin said nation that they are being so graciously hosted in, they can and do and will in the future leave it. They will leave the Titanic because they have a lifeboat called Israel. We don't. Where do we go?
Look, a lot of people act in the modern world. A lot of people act in ways that are inimical to their own interests. Everybody is destroying themselves in the modern world.
Okay, guys, I'm exhausted. I've been streaming for 7.5 hours. So, Colin, thanks for coming on. Southern Dingo, thanks for coming on. Bob, thanks for coming on. Yeah. And I'm going to say good night. So thank you so much, everyone.